All right, everybody, how's it going? Well, we got a full schedule of speakers tonight, I think. Great, thank you. One of them is not here, even though he told me 2 hours ago he's going to come online. But I tell you what we can do. Just in case any of you are interested in, I got an email from Scott Bush. I guess everybody in SABR did. The convention is on. The national convention in Baltimore is on August 17th through the 21st, I think. That's right. The baseball game is the Orioles against the Red Sox on Friday, August the 19th. It's a pretty special day around here because it's my birthday. So I'm gonna celebrate my birthday at Camden Yards. Yes, I share a birthday with Bill Clinton, you know. And one of the Wright brothers, actually. So I am looking forward to it. Whenever they release the information, it should be any time now. I think they on SABR.org, they have released a kind of semi-schedule, what the main speaker is going to be. I can't remember who it is. So look for that. For those of you, anybody thinking about going to the national convention besides me? Baltimore. Looking forward to it. Should be interesting. Yeah. Crab cake. Yeah. Okay. Babe Ruth Museum, right? Okay, so I'm not going to talk much tonight because, as Bob said, President never gets a chance to eat. So I'm going to listen to all these speakers tonight, and I'm going to eat my salad. And the first speaker here, those of you who go to the Rogers Hornsby Winter Meeting every year, no mic, but I'm not going to say much more. I'm going to let Bill Brown introduce Mike. So, thank you. All right, great to see you guys. Linda, nice to have you with us. You guys live what? Blocks from here?
5 blocks from blocks.
That is disgusting. You realize how long Mr. Capps has been in his car today? He has stood up ever since he walked into the building an hour and a half ago because his car being locked behind the steering wheel. He ran into a fire on his way up to 290 from Round Rock, and that caused him to be sitting in the car for about an hour. But anyway, he's here. That's and how many, it's great to have. Is this far enough? Keep going. Oh, you want me out of it? I know what you're doing. Right about there. Okay. It's great to have somebody here in person. Not that you guys aren't here in person. We have a lot of speakers on Zoom, which is fine. But Mike spent all this extra time and effort to get here, and I'm happy he did. He's kind of had a different circuitous route to baseball broadcasting too. Not that that was planned, but he came up through the news business. He was here in Houston working for Channel 2 as a news reporter, and he even shot some of his own video for 6 years under Ray Miller, the legendary news director. He also worked for WFAA in Dallas as a news reporter, and he worked for CNN. Did any of you know that? As a news reporter, and he was covering the Gulf War. Some pretty heavy stuff. He was live on the air with the Branch Davidian siege. Oh, and wow, covered that for how many hours?
Well, I was here today. Actually, 50 whatever days it was, and 10 days after, so 67.
Yeah.
The last 10 hours.
Last 10 hours live. Dan Rather was walking down the street after it was all over, congratulated him on the outstanding job he did of narrating the Branch Davidian siege. So he came at baseball from a totally different angle than most of us. And then in 2020, when the Round Rock Express started, he was the voice, and he still is.
2000.
2000.
Not 2020.
I'm sorry, I meant to say 2000. Yeah.
I didn't get this gray hair.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I didn't either. And
he said 2000 because he's got the gray hair too.
Yeah. And I haven't doubt. But anyway, so he's been, at the mic for all these Round Rock games, and he's done some Astros games, filled in on some other major league games along the way. He's written a book, Grinders. It's his second book. He did a book. What was the title of your Red Murph book?
Scout searching for the best in baseball.
Scout searching on Red Murph, legendary scout who signed Nolan Ryan and many others.
Fearless. That it came out, or when he did that?
It came out
96.
96. And this book is special. Tal's read it. I've been happy to read it. It's about a lot of guys who just had to dig down so deep to either get to the big leagues or get to AAA or whatever their destination was. And that's the common theme, but the differences in their life stories and the way their families got involved, supporting them and encouraging them and things of that nature. It's really a heartfelt story that I think every baseball fan can enjoy reading. It doesn't come out until July. It'll be at Barnes and Noble. It'll be on Amazon. And Mike Capps will probably have about 4,000 copies in the trunk of his car. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is Mr. Mike Capps.
I come home. I mean, we had two of our three daughters were born here. I spilled some blood in Houston streets covering news. I went to the hospital 6 times within 5 months, got hit by a car. Billy fell down, burned hair off my back, my neck. But the best thing in that was in 1976. A fellow in this room threw a no-hitter, and I was a young cop beat reporter. And for some reason, Bill Worrell or whoever the other sports guy was couldn't come out to the game. And so I go bebopping in there. And I think maybe the only other guy in there that anybody would have known is now the lieutenant governor. And he wasn't asking any questions. So Larry Dierker throws this no-hitter and he's standing there. And so I'm a puppy, man. I'm like, okay, this is just the coolest damn thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I ask him a couple of questions, and then I say, in the 7th inning, you switched to a slider as your out pitch, didn't you? And he goes, wait a minute. How the hell did you know that? I said, well, I was listening to Gene Elston on the radio, and he said, and who the hell are you anyway? I had to ask myself that same question because I died and gone to heaven. I was in the Astros locker room. I get to meet Bill Burton that night. Just had a great time. But Houston means so much to us in so many ways. And four of the best people and most wonderful friends I have are seated right here, Lucas and Bill Brown and Larry and Tal Smith. And they've all been supportive of me in any one of a number of ways. Larry's come over and done games with me. Bill's done games with me. Greg and I have talked in spring training time and time again. And so it's really like coming home. And the whole premise of this book goes all the way back to Old Burnett Field in Dallas, the home of the Dallas Fort Worth Rangers, the Dallas Eagles, all the way back to the Dallas Giants in 1910s. And my grandfather had been a pretty good semi-pro player before World War I broke out. And in fact, the Pirates were talking to him and he said, hey, I got to go fight World War I. And he loses hearing in an ear, comes back, and they can't sign him because he lost balance, whatever. But he gave me the game. And not to spoil the intro of this book, because this is in the intro, but this is sort of launches me into where I want to go with this in the presentation I have. And it's this. We're seated at a Minneapolis Millers and Dallas Fort Worth Rangers game at Old Burnett Field. This was in 1960. And what would we do without telemarketers? But so bottom line was my grandfather's watching this guy in left field. And he says, I want you to pay particular attention to Yastrzemski. He's going to be something. But I looked down at his score sheets and he has like 6 checks on one side and 4 on the other. And I said, well, what are the check marks? He said, you're going to see these guys' names in the box scores off and on in Boston, Doug Walton from Minneapolis, and in Kansas City. He was Kansas City A's in those days. And he said, and this has stuck with me for 60 plus years. He said, you're gonna see them in both places. And I said, why is that so special? He said, these guys are the engine that drives baseballs across. And we know them now as grinders. And so when I ran this idea at Tal and ran it at Bill, they're going like, wow. And I'd done 2 years of research and I couldn't find a similar book. And once I got going, these two were just so incredibly into this and really making me think about it. And Tal told me that when he was raised back east, he was always interested in the guys that really weren't the big stars. Now he liked the big stars, and we all did. But then I got to thinking about that. And when the Astros came here, the Core 45s came here in '62, golly, what a thrill that was for an 11-year-old kid. And my dad would bring us down to this little East Texas haunt where I was raised. And we got to see Musial. We got to see Mays and McCovey and Marichal and all these guys, Drysdale, and all these guys. And I couldn't wait to get Colt 45's information. And it wasn't, in those days, you just didn't get as much. But Tal, I know you're gonna remember this, and some of you who were here, they actually let kids go down on the sides of the field and foul ground and watch guys take outfield. And I got to see Roberto Clemente throw, and I thought, how the hell does anybody do that? But it was such a thrill to be able to do it. But I was always interested in the Don Buddens of the world and the American Renews of the world. And J.C. Hartman, who I later met covering police news here, he was a sergeant in the Houston Police Department. And every time I had a chance, I'd drag him into that press room over at old police station at 61 Reasoner and sit him down. And he go, what do you want to talk to me for? I said, you're a ball player. I want to talk to you. And so, but a dude, man, it's just a great guy. And so that all these kinds of things stuck with me. And as the idea came about, I got to thinking about, I have this friend in Dallas, and he's a big baseball fan. And when I was working at ABC, he would call up to the office. I was in the Midwest Bureau, and he called up the office, and he would tell the secretary, he said, Al Zarilla's called. And I go, wait a minute. Or it'd be Umberto Robbins, or it'd be Pumpsie Green, or somebody like that. And so about 6 times he pulls his stunt, right? So I told her, I said, you're probably not even going to know this name. But if you want to get this guy good, when he calls back, tell him you're Candy Bar. And he did. And she did that, and he almost passed out. I said, how would she know that I knew who Candy Bar was? I said, well, you got to explain that to her. I'm not, but so that's sort of the way it all came about. And we started it in 2018, and the guy who was writing it with me, he actually didn't write it, but was a fellow named Chuck Hartenstein, who actually pitched in Dallas Fort Worth and pitched 18 innings of, you guys know this, 25-inning game. And my cousin Billy Capps had signed him for the Chicago Cubs, and we got to be friends when I moved to Round Rock in 2000. I was about to say 2020, Billy. We were in Sugarland on October the 3rd, last day of the season, and I got a text. Chuck had passed away, and I went back to Austin and went to see his wife the next day, and I said, we're working on this book. And at that point we hadn't had a bite from the publisher. I said, but he's gonna stay as co-author. And we did, and we got a publisher, and I hadn't worked on it really very hard in probably 6 weeks. And once first of November, we had the deal sealed, and then 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. when we got it done. It's all set to go, and I'm really proud of it. We've got some folks who have been so kind and so thoughtful in this industry that have really said great things about it. And like I said, Bill edited it. Tal has had so much say in it. And I just want to, ask you, if you want to stop me and ask questions about this, that's great. But it's just been a labor of love to do it, number one. And number two, to be in this industry after the way my news career ended. It ended, and I'll just be very, very candid, very openly, it ended. I woke up in the middle of the night. I'd covered police news down here for 6 years. And this was in the days Houston was wild and it was, you just don't remember. It was 800 murders a year and fires and police chases. And I can tell you, sit here all night long and tell you stories about that. But the bottom line was then the Gulf War and covering that. And the last day we're in northern Iraq, and it's my last day over there after 8 months. And we had heard a rumor that one of the towns in northern Iraq had been liberated. So we go, there's 20 of us go running up there. My 3 guys from CNN and me, CBC from Canada, BBC from Great Britain, ABC, CNN, and NBC. And we're met by 6 Republican Guard, and they wouldn't let us go in this town. So we go back out to the main road, and before we could get out of the cars, and as we're getting out of the cars, 2 truckloads of Republican Guard with AKs, bayoneted, jump out. They surround us. And I'm thinking, dear sweet leaping Jesus, here we are. I've been in firefights. I've ducked bullets here for the last 8 months, and I'm going to get it in the throat the last day I'm in theater. What the hell is that? And I looked up and I go, really? Can't we have, like, remember the firefight? You right, and it would have been fine with that. Well, over the hill in this mountainous area come 2 A-10 Warthogs, the tank fighters, and buzz these guys. They get in the trucks and jump off. We get in the car and haul ass up to Turkey and fly home. And that was it. Think there's not a God in heaven? I got many stories about that. But the bottom line to it was, after the Waco siege, I'm lying in bed one night, fall asleep. I wake up and I busted my head wide open with a bedpost. But if you look closely, you can see the hole. Again, think there's not a God in heaven. The therapist we chose was a 4-tour duty side gunner on a copter at Nam and a licensed Presbyterian lay minister. We had to break it all down and start all over. I'd gotten away from faith. I got away. My way to deal with this stuff was either to smoke something, stick something up my nose, or drink a half bottle of Wild Turkey. It just was what it was. And that had to stop. It had to stop, and it did. And I've told Bill many times, and I've mentioned it now, I really never could have done baseball as dark a soul as I was in those days. And it just changed everything in my whole life changed. Baseball, bam, 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 it all worked out. Kids started to love me again instead of running from me. The grandkids the same. It just became a better way of life. And that's part of the heart and soul I put into this book. And I'll be happy to take questions, and I've got a bunch of stories too. Yep.
Candy bar.
How can I put this? We're a mixed company. Let's see. A stage performer, not necessarily of pristine character, who frequented many types of seedy places, including places run by and frequented by mob bosses. How's that? All right. Is that clean enough? Really, she was a stripper, and a lot of people there in their yard.
I just want to clear that up.
I think maybe the younger folks knew that, but
Mike,
yes, sir.
tell us again when the book, you think it's to be published?
It's coming out at the All-Star break. That's what we're shooting for. Yeah. The designers are working on it, and we're really excited about it.
I am sure there are a number of people here who would like to get a copy, autograph copy,
We'll be happy to do that.
and we're already proposing to for James April, over there to see the basic count.
You coming to see the Space Cowboys? How about that? Guess who called and gave him a load of crap about the new name? Yeah,
Everybody,
yeah.
I want to see the big over, what's too high.
I thought they ought to have some special nights for that, you know, like marijuana Mondays. Well, Stoner Saturday, there you go. Totally torpedo Tuesdays. Lots of stuff. I even suggested to the Astros radio producer that he have a booth to sell, you know, the CBD products. He said he didn't think that the ownership let him do it, but anyway. Yes, sir.
So much, maybe some of the Astros. Right?
Yeah,
The transition.
well, let's see, I'm trying to think now. We've had. Yeah, I got a boatload of different kind. I'm not sure. Not having a list here, I don't know that there for guys who passed through Houston, but I'm not recalling any of that, but the Astros weren't ignored. I can promise you that.
You mentioned that, but
Well, if I had a lot of trouble trying to get a hold, you know, and a lot of the real older guys were. I got Freddie Potak. I had a long 2-day interview with Jack McKeon, which was just crazy good. Guys that you obviously have seen are, and I had 2 or 3 people say to me, people aren't going to recognize these guys. I said, that's the point, because there's so many of them go through the system that nobody, you know, you may not remember them, but I did, and I'm racing through my brain trying to come up with an Astro for you, and I know we have 2 or 3, but and all of them, one of the most interesting groups of guys. We do have families included. As I'll tell you who's in it is Deacon Jones, the former Astros hitting coach, and the stories he tells about Jim Crow South will absolutely make the hair stand on the back of your neck. And Deacon is as funny as the day is long, but when he gets down to those stories, it gets serious. And that was one of the tales we really wanted to tell. And I've known Deacon for I don't even know how many years. And it's just sitting talking on the phone with these guys and their wives. It's just been absolute blessed. There's a kid named Chris Chestnut that caught with the Rangers a little bit, and then sort of made a halfway name for himself as a relief pitcher. And I'll just tell you a quick story about him. He played for us for a couple of seasons after we left the Astros the first time. And he was called up to the Rangers in 2014. He's catching in the bullpen. He was backing up whoever the catcher was for the Rangers that year. But so Mike Maddox was the pitching coach and called the bullpen. And Jimenez answers the phone and says, "Hey, what you need?" He goes, "Hey, Jimmy, have you ever pitched?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I pitched a whole lot." Well, it's a ball-faced lie. He had pitched 1 inning in high school, right? So they said, "Okay, well you got the 9th inning." Ball. He told me, he said, "Captain, I'm telling you, I'm sitting there like this. I've got my gear on, and the bullpen catcher's got his gear on." And he said, "What did Maddox say?" He says, "I got the 9th." He says, "There's 2 outs in the top half of the 8th. You better start getting ready." So it says he hadn't had enough warm-ups. And he said that they open the gate and out he goes. And he says, the crowd's kind of like, what the hell is this? And he said, I look up and I go, "Dear God in heaven, what have I done?" And he said his first pitch, he said, "I just decided I was just going to turn it loose." And he said, "Yeah, 74 straight." So he said, and then I got a swinging strike 2 on a changeup that floated in at about 58. And he said, and I bared down on the last one was 87. And when I threw it 87, he said, I had no feeling in my knuckles. My elbow was already burned off and I felt like I needed shoulder surgery when I got back into the dugout. And he said, it was worse 3 days later too. So he said he learned it. He would slower and slowest was the best. Then we had the Harrison family. Just one second. And they're about to have 4 generations. They've got 3, there's 9 guys, and Jerry Jr.'s son is a prospect, and 2 of Scott's sons are prospects. And that's going to be interesting to see those kids, see if they come along and have a first 4 generation family baseball. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I was reading a little bit about you the other day,
Uh-oh.
and then I remembered,
Depending where you
I remembered something, and I saw on I forget a WordPress site that says all the players from Round Rock Express have walk-up music, but yours supposedly is AC/DC.
Yeah.
Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
So what exactly would we hear that?
When did we hear it? Well,
Yeah, well, we did.
walk up.
No, how did they come up with that? It's just something.
They, I mean, if I was playing, what would be my walk-up music? And I said, Thunderstruck. I didn't think they'd write it down. And so some guy writes a story about me about 6 years ago, and he says, what was your walk-up music? I said, obviously you haven't read all the important data about it. And he says, what are you talking about? And I said, I opened up this little, they had a little pamphlet and they had a little something they sold and gave to people that they're trying to sell stuff to. Why they won't put me in something they're trying to sell. Anyway, so it says walk-up music and Thunderstruck by AC/DC. And this guy's writing a story, and he said, he ended it like this. He said, you know, Thunderstruck. When I talked to Mike Capps, I'm thinking Frank Sinatra. I did it my way. Okay.
Well, I just want to ask you.
No, that's
So
I was really not anticipating that question. Oh, well.
I read a little bit. So is the SMU football story the biggest sports story you've ever been involved with?
Well, now let me ease into it this way.
Okay.
I had somebody say to me the other day, the guy who's producing our podcasts said, boy, I really like that ESPN 3030. That told the whole story of SMU. I said, it didn't tell one damn bit of it. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, because it was me and that guy that was calling me up, telling me he was Marrero Robinson. We got onto that 3 years ahead of when we finally got. And I had 17 death threats out of that. And the FBI had I came home one night and the wiretap guy putting the wiretap on my phone saying they caught a couple of people doing that. But the 3030 thing, they never even wanted to talk to us, 2 of us that busted. And other people taking credit, that's fine, whatever. I was off doing baseball and I didn't care after that, never mind. But the bottom line to it was, we actually had them dead to rights 3 years. In 83, we should have had it. And the lawyer for the TV station WFA in Dallas was seeing the story I was feeding back from here. It was a player from Beaumont. And we had this triple sourced. And we knew it was rock solid. And this lawyer kept saying, nope. And the news director said to me, what do you mean? No, this is just not going to run. It just can't run. Segue to 4 years later, when the death penalties, the NCAA is called 10 band boosters up to Kansas City to face them and say, you can no longer participate for life in their programs. Guess who the 3rd band booster was? The lawyer who didn't allow the first story. So we had to get outside counsel to do that. It was just, and we were doing other stuff. In fact, we did the space, he and I covered the space shuttle explosion in the midst of all that. And that was a whole nother wild tale, But the whole thing was, it came in sequences. And I actually got kicked out of Campisi's restaurant one night, like 5 years after the story ran. I was working at CNN, and I'm sitting there with a couple of friends, having some beers and eating some Italian food. And Roz Campisi, who owns the place, comes up and she says, "You have to leave." I go, "What? What are you talking about?" We actually had a video of the back end of the restaurant, video of SMU players coming in and getting money doled out to them. So Roz held a grudge for quite a while. But I didn't get visited by the mob, so I guess it worked out all right. Yes, sir.
I got a couple questions. Number one is, I'm hearing a book, another book. From your life, I'm hearing another. Aren't you hearing another book? So she was.
Well, if I find somebody else to write it.
No.
I mean, I was raised in Redneck, East Texas. I'm a tree reader. And, you know, they just don't tend to believe a lot of stuff I say. And there's the guy out there come out with the coffee shop all the time. If he see me walk in when I was a little boy, that oldest cat's boy, he just ain't right. Ain't right. And the more I thought about that, the older I got, I thought, pretty glad about that. You know? So anyway.
Question, back to baseball.
Yeah.
If you're concerned, you and I, we talked about that a lot. The major league owners, one of the campaigns is to reduce the size of minor leagues. Now, it's not gonna affect AAA directly or AA, but it's going to affect something. What are your views?
You know, first of all, I hate getting politics into this, but I'm gonna tell you this, right? That's un-American, what they did, shut down those teams. How do 3 labor lawyers, or however many there were, that showed up at these places, walk into a private business and say, "We're shutting it down"? Well, am I not right? There's some stuff going on, lawsuits filed by some of those owners now, and who knows where that goes. But anytime you start doing that kind of thing, that gets the news reporter edginess going in me, and I'm not home. The other side of it is, you're turning kids over to independent leagues or collegiate bat leagues, and who knows where that goes, and do you develop them the right way? I don't see the professional development with managers in AAA now who are 33 and 34 years old and never played AAA. One of the things to me about the finishing process, AAA has always been having that veteran guy like a Jackie Moore that we had for 8 years, who'd been in the game for 50 years and knew what it took to get them ready. I shall see that, and that's rather bothersome. If that's more or less what you're asking.
Well, and also, it seems like it's the beginning of the death of some of the same type of people you wrote about in your current book, because this career minor leaguer thing is be over.
Well, that's one of my big worries about this, and probably there's another book in that, because we had 2. No, we'll have. What was it, Tal? We probably, in the days that we were with you guys, we probably had 6 and 7 and 8 veteran free agents mixed with those guys.
Sure.
Right. And we had 2 off and on this year. I don't know how you take guys to finishing school who need it, really. We had guys that were who skipped AA and came to us, and golly, they never really caught up. And when you see that, I mean, it gets exposed very early. And a couple of them made some adjustments and made it to the big leagues, but it was just to see how they would handle the big leagues. And the sequential step, whoever the founding fathers who put this all together had it right for developing players, as far as I'm concerned. Now, you get in argument with owners and all this kind of business about that, and they say, well, we're just not gonna spend 15 grand a month on a veteran free agent, or 8 grand or 10 grand or whatever it is. Bring them in because we can do that on our own. Well, I don't know about it. I'm really skeptical. But I'm not land basing them on the air. I'm just, calling the game. It's debatable, but I think they're probably off base. Yes, sir.
Question, when you say grinder, did I think of a guy that's marginally talented, but talented enough to make it, that hangs in there, he goes up and down the line, what you mean? There's got a player now, I don't know if it's any of Bush, but named Matt Bush. That's kind of familiar with, and he seems like a grinder. Is he in the book or not? Can you talk about him a little bit?
No, well, we had Matt Bush as a pitcher briefly last year, and then in 2018, you're talking about the shortstop that had. Is this?
Right, as a pitcher. San Diego.
Yeah, but he was a pitcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was a shortstop and then ran into some dope problems and came back as a pitcher.
#1 draft choice for the Padres.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, good kid. But
They went off down, he went to jail,
Yeah.
Tampa.
well, and that's, I didn't say I was not going to write another book on these guys. Because there's at town, I had this discussion many times. And one of the things that we said in the intro was we do not presume to say we are doing all the grinders and but there's not going to be thousands of them.
But I just thought you mentioned.
I think it's you know what? That's right. And well, we have Alan Zenner, who played here briefly. Alan Zenner, he was the #1 draft choice for the Mets out of El Paso. And it took him forever. And he had brief stints here and then in Arizona, I believe. And he's the hitting coach now for the Cincinnati Reds. So, and the stories he tells, I mean, he goes up to, I'm giving the book away, but yeah, he goes up to New York, right? He's drafted by the Mets and he's being interviewed on TV. Now he's
That was a former Astro.
yeah, briefly.
What you were trying to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, so he's being interviewed. And then one of these guys, big sports guy on one of the TV stations. And they cut the interview off after about 40 seconds. And he goes, why'd you cut the interview off? He goes, you kept saying you were so proud to be a Yankee. He said, you're going to the Mets. Sorry. Little stage fright up there, and Zenner will be the first one to laugh about it. And he said, well, there's a lot of people and a lot of people in New York. But he said, I wanted to crawl under something, but I couldn't find anything to crawl under. But to this day, he remembers that. He says, oh, geez. Do you have to put that in the book? I said, oh, yeah. Yes, sir. That's, and his dad told me, his dad's a character himself. His dad told me, he said, Cap, you can put that in the book? I go, damn straight, I'm putting that in the book. What are you talking about? And he's I'm aware of that. No doubt. Yes, sir.
I guess like what you talking about players, I used to also fly in way umpires. To start from the low minor leagues.
That's a good.
Big leagues today.
And the grinders theme actually takes up everybody.
Yeah.
Stop and think about it. And we mentioned that in the intro. I mean,
I'll start you around, don't worry about it.
If you're not the CEO of a corporation and you're willing to trade 40 hours for 60 for the good of the company for 5 or 6 months or for whatever, you grind. If you're a single mother with 2 or 3 kids and you're working 2 or 3 jobs, you're grinding. I mean, you're a business owner and you've got tax problems out the wazoo and you're trying to get all that worked out, you're grinding. And so it's not just a baseball book in that and that's one of the things Tal mentioned on the podcast he did with us. That is so poignant to this, and it's one of the things we pointed out right up front, is that look, this applies to every person who reads this book. Because sooner or later, if you're going to survive in life, you're going to be driving. There's no question about baseball, whatever. And it was just so much fun to write it. But I'll tell you, catching up with some of these guys, getting to sit still. You know, anybody who ever wore a wet jock for a living or in college or whatever has this Bugs Bunny thing. And it's motor's still running, right, Larry? I mean, just it's motor's still running. That's it.
Think about Casey Candelo.
You know,
Of course, he might be above the level you're talking about because he did play a lot of years in Major League.
he did, but he's protected. You know, that was I had so many that I couldn't get to them all, and I had so much trouble trying to get. I couldn't get him on the phone, and I tried, Larry. I really tried. And
He told me one time that his mom was a professional baseball, not softball player, who was in the league of their own. And most guys, you know, they say I played catch with my dad, or my dad used to hit pongos for me. My mom did that.
I'll tell you,
There's
Casey,
one thing that she told me, Casey, when you go out there and play, you're gonna have some good days and you're gonna have some bad days. But you never, ever have to have one bad day hustling.
that's it. Casey Candell was playing for the Buffalo Bisons when I was in Nashville before I came to Brown Rock. And he'd been called up. And I knew him a little bit. I'd run into him a couple of times in Houston before I got into baseball. And I went down on the lights Sunday morning. It's in April, and Nashville is cold, and it's wet, and it's raining. And they had ladies, excuse me, they had this long urinal that ran from about that wall right here. Casey has on combat boots, jeans, a big heavy Denny Moore kind of jacket, big heavy jacket, like a lumberjack would wear. And he has one of those big winter hats that has a big little ball bouncing around like that. He is up moonwalking backward on this urinal. I said, Case, what are you doing? I said, came to congratulate you about me in the big leagues. Don't want to break my concentration. I'll talk to you in a minute. Yeah, we do a second grinders book. I'm gonna go.
You guys remember the to have airplanes where it was sort of laminated with the safety instructions and everything was maybe a foot wide, a foot and a half. Like this. Casey would get on the charter flights, he would get up between first class and the coach section and hold on to the walls on both sides and stand on that thing. And when the plane took off. How many miles did you get?
And that about ends the number of stories we can tell in mixed company about Casey. Unfortunately, anybody else have questions? I've really enjoyed this. You guys are just the best. Anybody else? Great. Okay. Well, we'll have it out and we'll.
Pleasure as always, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, great as usual. Always hits a home run. Now we're gonna have Chris give us a presentation. Something Bill Brown is waiting for. Go ahead, Chris.
Let me get started. The screen being shared.
Just go to share screen. Hit share screen. And go to your presentation. Go to your presentation. Wherever your presentation is, right there. Then hit share. There you go. Now share.
Zooming in. Yes, and there's your turn. Zooming.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Chris Chestnut. Bill Brown asked for this kind of presentation a few months ago. Work. Things aren't working out.
Really?
Follow up when you.
So this is about baseball's biggest contracts. You wanted to
You wanna make the one window?
get.
No, that's right. I don't know this. It's all right. It's okay.
Baseball's biggest contracts. We're gonna look at, we're going through the data that I found. And then we'll look on methodology and how to analyze these big contracts. We'll look at player performance, team performance, and then for fun, we'll sign Carlos Correa to a contract tonight and get baseball back on track. So for the data, find lots of lists of large contracts. So I started with a minimum value of $90 million for the total contract with at least 5 years. So obviously this is a recent phenomenon, these big contracts. It goes back to 1999. There's 104 of these contracts, 73 for batters, 31 for pitchers. There's a summary of them. You see they go from 5 to 14 years. I inflated all the contract numbers to 2021 values to compare them. So it's about $19 billion worth of contracts and an average annual salary of $25.5 million. If you look by age, they are about where you expect them to be, from age 26 to about 32, when players get past arbitration and have some kind of track record. But there are some people, outliers, some very young guys who only have 1 or 2 years to league. And then you get out Cabrera, Ichiro, and Barry Bonds when they were older, got a contract. This is the age they were when they signed the contract. Pitchers are similar, but smaller because there's fewer of them. And you get Kershaw as the youngest and Kevin Brown as the oldest. If you look by position, first baseman the most popular, center fielders are second, then right field and third base. Second baseman and catchers only had 4 of these kind of contracts. Now, when we measure player performance, there's a lot of things you can do. I'm using WAR, wins above replacement. I'm using the values from Baseball Reference. There's different flavors of WAR, but they're all fairly consistent. But I'm using one from Baseball Reference. And so this is kind of their definitions of how to keep the number to a performance level. Of course, we're talking about high value contracts. We're talking about, high starters up through MVP style players. So here's my methodology of how I compared what's going on. We're going to use our rules. A few of these players have more than one contract, have had 2 of these large contracts. We'll sign one for $100 million and then later his career signed one for $240 million. Those were the values at the time of signing. So if you look at what I did was I took the 3 years before the contract was signed. Some players may have only had 1 or 2 years, some may have had 5 or 6, but the first 2 years generally are they're rookies or they're not really established. So the WAR numbers are kind of a little out of character. And I took an average of what that WAR value was. So for Pujols, his 3 years before he signed his first contract, he had an average WAR of 6.9. And then you compare it to the first 3 years of his contract, he had an 8.5 average WAR. So we had 123%. So we're comparing pre-contract, post-contract, and then kind of get a percentage of whether he was better or worse than his contract. Then you extend it out to his total contract. And he had an 8.6 average WAR for his total contract, 124 compared to his pre-contract. 2011 was an option year. And then in 2012, he signed with the Angels. So we go back 3 years, and his new average WAR was 7.5, even though you can see it's trending in the wrong direction. His first 3 years as an Angel, he had a 3.4 WAR, only 45% of what he had in the 3 years prior.
Yeah.
And then the remainder of his career, his total contract was 1.3 WAR. It's only 17%. So we kind of take this back to what Baseball Reference defined as players. He was an MVP player for the Cardinals, and he was a reserve and replacement level player for the Angels. So that's what we're comparing 3 years before and to 3 years and then total contract. So if you look at individual performances, you got completed contracts and you got open contracts. People are still in an active contract, even though Buck Posey just retired, so that's with off. But you see only 4 players in completed contracts of batters exceeded their pre-contract rule. So you're signing a player, you're not getting what you thought you're going to get. So of course, if you have the best, we have to talk about the worst. NA is because their average contract WAR was a negative number. It was in below 0, and it blew up the calculations out. So, and the number 2 is that was their second contract. So you see who has good numbers and who has bad numbers. And poor Alex Bregman is on the bad number list because he hasn't performed well since he signed his contract. Pitchers are the same way. There's not very many of them that exceed their pre-contract WAR. Greinke did it on his first contract. Even on the open contracts, there's not that many pitchers who get these big contracts that's extended more than 5 years. Then the worst ones, Homer Bailey, and then a couple of open contracts with players that have not performed to the level they have before they signed the contract. If you look at group performance, there's only 104 of these things. So let's group them in by different combinations. If you just look at batters as a whole and pitchers as a whole, you see the performance for the total contract is about 57%. So you sign a guy over his life of the contract, you only get about half of his performance. And even in the first 3 years is only about 70%. So already you're not getting what you thought you were getting. If you look at performance by all contracts, now this is pre-contract or how they compare to that. A lot of numbers on this, but don't want to show them out. 1 out of 9 for the total contract was better than what you thought you were getting. And only 20%, 1 out of 5 chance in the first 3 years. But if you look at the total contract, 50%, you have a 1 in 2 chance of the player you sign will perform at less than half of what his pre-contract was. So it's almost a random number crapshoot whether or not you're going to get a good player or a bad player. If you look at performance by age, now again, this is age when they sign the contract. Obviously, the young guys are still in their third contract, they're in their prime, but you see as you get older, your numbers drop off to how well you perform. And then the number at the end is covered up by the people, that's about 89%. That's mostly Barry Bonds, who for reasons no one can decipher, he's better in his later years than he was in his it's not been established why that happened. And then total contract, you see the drop signal. And then if you compare both side by sides, everybody drops off and some more than others. Pitchers has a similar kind of idea, a little more consistent because there's fewer of them and the age ranges are a little bit tighter. But they still drop off also during the life of the contract. And then generally see a difference depending on who you sign. Now, if we look at by position, again, you'll see catchers and shortstops perform the best in the first 3 years. And they hold on for the life of the contract. And you see the differences, left fielders drop off quite a bit. If you look at cost for performance, so we're going to measure how much you're paying for each value of WAR. There's a lot of numbers on here. It's kind of difficult for you as a chart table like this. We'll make a chart. The bigger the number, the worse the value. So pitchers and left fielders cost the most to get 1 WAR. If you look at it, to kind of normalize it, it makes it a little bit easier to read. 100 would be the average of all these positions. The bigger number is better, the red numbers are the worst. So if you kind of look at this for a second, you see the worst are pitchers and left fielders. You can kind of understand pitchers are just 1 small injury away from being totally infected. So you can see that's kind of, and left fielders generally are big hitters and not much defense. So their WAR numbers are based on their offense. And if that starts to drop, then there's not really much else they have to do. Catchers, there's only 4 catchers. So again, look at these catchers. There's not that many catchers who are not who can hit. I mean, you got to look at the Astros over that have a catcher that can hit. So you get these guys who are just they're top flight players, and so they perform well. And shortstops obviously are usually the best athlete on the field. So you expect them to have a good performance. Everybody else is kind of in the middle, kind of on average. Now, if you look at by age, again, we'll put it in a graph form. The bigger the number, the worse value you are. And again, the far number is Bond's influence. But you see the younger players still in the prime, and then as you start getting older, you get to be worse on your money. You normalize that again, and you see that younger people obviously are better value. So if you're going to get a choice one, signing a 26-year-old or a 29-year-old or a 30-year-old, that may have some influence on your decision of how much to pay. Okay, that's kind of the player. Now we're going to look at the teams, because really you're signing these players to be better in theory. Okay, this takes a little bit of explaining. The year before you signed the player, you had a certain number of wins. And after you signed the player, how many seasons did you have that were better than that season before? So if you had first season, before you signed the guy, you had 70 wins. Did you have more than 70 wins each year after you signed him for the first 3 years? 17 teams did, had all 3 seasons better, but 18 teams had no seasons better. They signed the guy and got worse. And then you have kind of so again, you can't say it, sign the guy's gonna make you a better team. Now, you may be signing the guy for various reasons. Here are the teams that signed and got all 3 years they were better. And a lot of these teams look like they were 1 or 2 players away from being better anyway. When you look at the ones who didn't have any improvement, you get teams that are signing hometown heroes. I think Joe Mauer with the Twins. I mean, you can't not sign him. You have some kind of, you got to be able to sell tickets. And so even though you sign him, you don't really have the wherewithal to improve your team as a whole. 3-year win changes. This is cumulative wins. So if like a team like the Cubs say they won 70 games the year before they signed the guy to a big contract, and the 3 years after that, they improved by 67 wins. Whereas the Twins got worse by 87 wins in the 3 seasons after they signed the big contract. And there you see the numbers for the various teams as we go through. Now, really, wins is one thing, but getting the postseason. Again, these teams you think are on the cusp of getting the postseason, and each have one more player. So the number in orange is a 3-year total. The number in orange is the number of playoff spots available through the year starting in 1999. And the blue bar is how many teams that made the playoffs after signing a player with a big contract. So you see it kind of peaks around 2012. There's another graph, a little easier to read. From 2012 to about 2016, 2 out of 3 teams in the playoffs had signed a big contract. But it's fallen off considerably over the last few years, and it's back to where it was before that big peak right there. Okay, so you get the playoffs, and really at that point, unless you're just barely on the fringe playoff, you have a chance to go to the World Series. And that's what because it's kind of a crapshoot sometimes. So here's all the teams since 1999 who made the World Series. And then if we look at who had a big contract, there was a stretch there in the 2012 or so. That's when everybody had big contracts. Most teams did, but it's not a surefire thing. I mean, that's just the way it works out. Of course, I think there's 5-year contracts. You get a guy like Verlander with a 3-year deal. He's not going to show up on this kind of chart.
What's that showing, Chris? Is it showing good or bad?
It's showing it's not a guarantee. It's been like, why are you signing the guy? Are you signing a big name player because he's the one key piece you need? Are you building a team around him? Or are you just signing him PR purposes for ticket sales?
Well, that's why I ain't saying.
Now, what this doesn't, there's no way of knowing. This doesn't really tell about the lack of better, the intellect of the team. How smart are they? I mean, the Angels signed a lot of guys, but they're not very good.
Yeah.
Whereas Astros haven't signed that many, to these long-term contracts, and they're 5 years, you know, in the World Series number of times. So it's more important, and the Rays haven't really signed anybody, and they're always a good team. So it's bigger than just signing the one player. It's just, if you do, and you go sell to your fans that we've signed Ken Griffey Jr. and you're the Reds back in his career, you haven't really improved your team. You may have improved that one position, but you haven't improved your team. So.
The 2020 Dodgers have a big contract with Clayton Kershaw.
This was the 3 years after he signed it longer earlier. He may be out of that 3-year window. It's not that they signed him, he's 6 years out. It's within that 3 years after they signed him, did they make the World Series? So it's a little bit, some of these players, it's tricky. Some of the younger guys, especially, they got a 6-year deal and they're improving every year, like Albert Pujols did in his first contract. For those kinds of players, rare. So I think the big thing is, you know, when you sign this guy and he performed at this level, you're pretty sure he's not going to meet that level during even the first 3 years of your contract. You have a really good chance he's not. So if you factor that in and say, okay, I know what I'm getting. I'm not getting Albert Pujols MVP. I'm getting Albert Pujols somewhat less than his MVP. The odds are, you know,
It seemed like they started this stuff, they signed, like Alfonso Soriano,
yes.
C3, similar to the Bulos contract. So why are you paying this guy this much money? You know, he's going to go down, you're not going to get him, he's going to be 44 years old on the contract. But you're giving him the money that he really earned playing with the Rangers and the Yankees.
That's a Joe Mauer contract. He got paid.
You know, but he stayed with Minnesota. That Joe
He
Mauer, I can see that.
Yes.
Like, see their heroes in Chicago on the team, that didn't happen. And but Nolan Ryan accused her because Astros didn't pay him exactly what he wanted, and pitched to him was 48. So it's pretty high level.
Soriano strikes me as one of the left fielder types. When he's not hitting, how much value is he adding to the team on the other facets of the game? I don't know. I mean, they moved him from second to left, and
Yeah, and the Cubs wasn't hitting that many times when
So there's other sayings for the general manager outside of the Astros. Who's talking about bringing Correa?
we're about to talk about Correa.
Oh,
We're
sorry.
gonna sign him. We're gonna sign him. I got Boras on the phone.
Good.
And we're gonna get this.
they're giving 23-year-olds like the piece all this money, but they're actually gonna be productive like they were giving 33-year-olds.
You're taking a risk that the guys give a track record on him after a couple, 3 years, that you can sign him for 6, hold all the arms, and you got him on his peak from 22, say, to 28,
Yeah,
as opposed to getting when he's George Springer and he's 27 to 33, when he's just naturally gonna age out. I mean,
he's after 33.
I mean, somebody's, you know, you may get a player who's 50% of Albert Pujols when he was 8 WAR is still a high level. But when he's 1.3, you're going, well, why am I paying $24 million a year for I can get anybody?
But they have the major league record, getting that double play.
So let's look at what we'll do about our friend Carlos Correa. We're gonna take the data we got from tonight, and we're gonna kind of apply it, see what number he's worth. A brief bio, everybody knows him, Rookie of the Year, All-Star, Gold Glove, Platinum Glove winner. He's gonna be 27 years old on opening day, if opening day of 2022 was when it was originally scheduled. He'll still be 27 on opening day, because I think his birthday is somewhere in the middle of summer, in September, so they'll have to cancel the season, but it's not be valid. There's his WARs by year. So his career average of 4.9, but his pre-contract average is 4.2. Now, Boras will say you can admit 2020, that was an oddball year. Who knows? I'm just taking the numbers as what he's performing. If you look at all the batters that we looked at, all 73 of them, their cost per WAR is about $9.2 million on average. And then you get Albert Pujols, his first contract, he was the best value of that. And then Ryan Howard was the worst. He had almost a -5 WAR over his contract, $151 million. Shortstops, there's 8 contracts, and they're about a little under $8 million per WAR. They're the 8 shortstops. Now, A-Rod obviously went to the Yankees and became a third baseman, but the year previously, he was a shortstop, so I counted him with the shortstops. Fernando Tatis that was his first year of his new contract. He had 6.6 WAR. Alex had the distinction of being both the best value and the worst value as a shortstop for the money that he was getting paid. Man, I should add that up. That's $800 million.
Yeah.
What are you for to J-Lo? It was just age 27 people, because that's what Correa is going to be on opening day. There's 5 of those contracts, about 8.8 cost per WAR. There's our 5. Bogarts and Jeter are back here, and Seager, who just retired, was your best value, and Matt Kemp, $44 million per WAR during his contract. And then we have 2 guys that aren't included in this analysis because they just signed going into the 2022 year. Lindor and Seager, 10 years, over $325 million each. They had 3.1, 2.9 WAR. If we give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll be like every other shortstop, they'll hold about 75% of their performance number. And that gives a cost per WAR of about $14.8 million.
Considered good war.
Is that?
What is considered a good war? World War II. Yeah, that would, yeah.
I'll get there. So if we summarize the table here, the 4 groups and the cost per WAR, and then Correa's 4.2, and then what we saw is percent change. You can anticipate he'll have a WAR between 2.1 and 3.1 during the life of his contract. And as a reminder, that puts him solidly in the starter range. Now, he may have years where he's an all-star, but that's generally what you expect if you're signing the guy. So what is he going to be worth? This is annual value. If you're willing to guess, well, we don't have enough data, let's just lump him with all batters. He'd be worth about 22.2 million per year. If you say, well, no, he's a shortstop, got a group of shortstops, a little under $25 million a year. But if you say, well, he's 27 years old, I mean, we've seen the chart, how different it can be. If we're going to look at 27-year-olds, he only gets about $19 million. But if you've got Boras and you say, we got to go with current contracts, this has got to be up to date. Recent contracts, he'd be worth about $46 million. So, who bought the checkbook? And they're $45 million now. What is that? I think it's like 35 or something like that. But that's just what the numbers say.
How many?
For the life of his contract, 10-year, $450 million contract.
In what he won't?
Yeah, $450 million.
Yeah, they won't. That's what I would say.
So if you want to pay him $350, you may be getting the best value of shortstop of the other 2 guys he signed. He's better than the other 2 guys based on. So they're at 325 and 341, 34 million a year and $33 million a year. And they have a WAR that's half of his, or 2/3 of his. Did I answer the questions? Okay.
Question.
Maybe Al or what else can answer this? So in baseball, especially if team's gonna hire, a new team's gonna hire for get a contract with a player, what kind of physical what can they do? Check out this guy's arm or leg or whatever? They get ready, offer a guy $300 million for 10 years. And they say we want to do we'll want to take an MRI on your arm and everything.
You would think they'd have to. I mean, because they're insuring problem.
Right.
So the insurance company's going to know what the guys are made of. But I don't know. I mean, Correa, he's had injury seasons. Yeah. I mean, is he? Especially with pitchers. If you get a pitcher, 3 pitches in the season like Verlander did a couple years ago and blows his arm out, they're paying $30 million a year for nothing.
Restrictions in the contract, like
you can't skydive, you can't ski, so, you can do that.
Okay. You can have a treadmill like Morse Salute or whatever you do.
Oh.
There's. But
Larry.
at some point, they're gonna do whatever they want to do.
Yes, Larry, how many times?
Before, I was in the room section.
On your Old Testament, did they have that? So tell you.
Yeah. Because geez, I don't know what all it's on for cow.
You can put things, so they have that,
Yeah, that's
contract.
That's all.
Areas.
Section these contracts. There's a long shopping list of prohibited activities. And well, enough that that's hard, you know, there, an example, voices of Louvre. Well, not, his contract says that there's all longer contracts did, that it said that he couldn't play basketball. And, one of the reports vary, when people think he got hurt in the Dominican playing basketball, others say with some other injury that was not prohibited. So again, these things are hard to police. I think there is a story though about Aaron Boone. When I got injured and with a prohibited activity and he admitted to it, then that affected his contract staff. But it's rare for those things to ever be proved. I can't think of any other errors.
I think Berkman admitted he was playing football and he hurt his knee.
So for mountain.
Yeah, he's playing quarterback. With the spring training, not completely ready. Twice.
Is he admitted?
No. Somebody, yeah, I don't.
Nobody's
All right, Chris, thank you.
Look the over and I was just gonna.
I want to ask Chris, how long does it take to put that?
Well, after he told me, it took about 2 or 3 weeks to get the data together and then start analyzing it. And then as the presentation got delayed, I was able to add more to it. And then the last last month, I had the team information. I finally got the team information together and see how they were performing, because that's kind of, you know, what year do you cut off is, I use 3 because I use 3 ahead of time, just as kind of a big enough sample that you can get their rookie year, their first years, but enough of it where you can actually see how you're going.
Really an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
All right.
You said you can't print tables, and y'all work something up.
All right, speaking of articles real fast, Tony, when would the next newsletter be out? What would that be? April, May? What,
Opening day, Scott.
opening day?
April, end of April.
Okay, so anybody looking to contribute, Chris? To the newsletter or anybody else? Y'all would need those articles or by when? What do you think?
Text it.
By tax day, all right? Oh,
Well, we'll have the second part of Bill's profile, Cal Smith. Really good.
yeah,
And so let's have other articles. Again, if anybody has any ideas, want to write something, please let us know, Scott, so.
so our final presentation of the evening, no pressure, Dan. Dan Walsh, he had a great presentation about the history of baseball through postage stamps. And it was really fascinating when I heard this for the winter meeting, and I invited Dan to talk to us about this very interesting history. But Dan,
One question.
it is
Yeah.
all yours. What do you think, Rick?
All right, so
Talk to
I get-
Wesley.
No, listen.
Go ahead,
how do I share screen?
Dan. Can't hear you.
How do- Can you hear me? I'm trying to share my screen.
All right, name.
We got you.
We got you.
You got it? You see my screen? Hello?
Yeah, Dan, we can't, we see you, but not your screen.
All right, well. Okay, see it now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Just a minute. What was?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's about, it's really. West is away.
What happened?
We lost his screen.
So it's a paper, we're up there.
Dan, we lost your screen there, Dan.
Here you are, you can fix the serial info. Yeah, good.
Dan, are you there?
He's muted. He's muted.
Oh, Dan, you're muted.
All right, I'm here.
All right, we don't see your screen anymore.
He started.
You can just manually change the slides if you want to. Want to just go ahead?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So some of you may be familiar with many of the US postage stamps that have come out over the years, such as the Jackie Robinson stamp, Babe Ruth. They've had a series on classic ballparks. And most recently, last summer, Yogi Berra. Overall, through the years, US Postal Service has produced 65 stamps related to baseball. And yet those 65 stamps are just a mere fraction of all the baseball stamps produced worldwide. Currently, there are more than 1,300 stamps related to baseball that have been issued by all the countries in the world. So we're going to start from the beginning. And the first baseball stamp that was issued came out of the Philippine Islands in 1934. It was this three stamps they issued for their 10th Far Eastern Championship games that were held in Manila that year. There were 4 teams that are 4 countries who participated in the Far Eastern Championship. The Philippines, China, Japan, and the Dutch East Indies. The Filipino team won the gold medal in those games, and arguably the Filipinos were perhaps the best, had the best national team in the early 20th century. They had won 6 of the 10 Far Eastern Championships between 1913 and 1934. The 34 games also featured the opening of Rizal Memorial Stadium. And in that same year, Babe Ruth led an all-star team on an Asian tour And they concluded that tour with 3 games in Manila that were played at Rizal Stadium. And the first 2 home runs hit in that stadium were hit by Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth. And for a number of years, there was a placard on the outfield wall that said, you know, second home run, December 9th, Babe Ruth. The next Far Eastern games were originally scheduled to be held in Japan in 1938, but Japan invaded China in 1937, and that was the end of all the Far Eastern games. The second stamp issued, baseball-related stamp, came out of Colombia in 1935. They issued 16 different stamps depicting 16 different sports for their Colombian national games. Then we move on to 1937. The 4th Central American Caribbean Games were held in Managua, or rather, let's see, where were they held? They were held in Panama City, 1938. 10 nations competed in 16 different sports. The Cubans won the gold medal, not surprisingly, in the baseball. The interesting point about the Central American and Caribbean Games are the oldest continuing regional games. Beginning in 1926, they're held every 4 years. Only the Olympic Games have a longer continuous history. Then we come to the US. The first US baseball stamp came out in 1939. The US Post Office took a nationwide poll of collectors when this stamp was first proposed, and the collectors voted almost overwhelmingly against a baseball stamp. However, they were overruled by President Franklin Roosevelt, who happened to be an avid stamp collector. This stamp was intended to commemorate the rules of baseball were created by as a total myth. Regardless, the stamp was issued on June 12th, 1939. It coincided with the opening of the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Although we now recognize the connection between Doubleday and Cooperstown is a myth, there were at the time several first day covers issued. And you can see here, the ones that have X's on them, those are Doubleday's picture. So I removed him from the covers. If my deal is working. Let's see. Oops. Sorry. Did you lose me again?
No, we got you.
We can still see you.
Yeah.
Okay. So got rid of Doubleday. Moving on. In 1944, Venezuela issued several stamps for the 7th World Amateur Baseball Championship. This featured teams from 8 countries. Venezuela won the championship, but only because Cuba and Mexico pulled out. They decided to not continue in the competition because there were some very strange umpiring decisions which favored Venezuela. Today, this Amateur World Series is still played. It's still known today as the Baseball World Cup. In 1948, the Amateur World Series were held in Managua, Nicaragua. The 8 teams participated, with the Dominican Republic winning the only World Cup championship they've ever won. The host team, Nicaragua, lost their first game to Mexico, and the country's dictator, Anastasio Somoza, fired his manager, and then he proceeded to manage the team himself And not surprisingly, Nicaragua lost 6 of their 7 games. The 10 centavos value of this series is a view of the Nicaragua's Estadio Nacional, which was dedicated at the beginning of the baseball tournament. After Somoza was assassinated in 1956, his son renamed the stadium Estadio General Somoza. Somoza was shot by this man, Rigoberto Perez. Perez was instantly killed on the spot. But then in the 1980s, when Somozas were no longer in power, the Sandinistas renamed the stadium Rigoberto Perez National Stadium. And then in 1998, it was renamed again, this time in honor of Dennis Martinez. Dominican Republic's first baseball stamp came out in 1959 for the 3rd Pan Am Games. There weren't very many stamps issued during the 1950s related to baseball. These 2 are the most notable, and they're both for the 3rd Pan Am Games. One issued by Dominican Republic and the other from Panama. The baseball games were held at Wrigley Field and Comiskey Park in Chicago. Venezuela won the gold medal, and USA took the bronze. One notable player on the US team was Lou Brock, but he only had 1 hit and 10 at-bats. Cuba's first baseball stamp was issued in 1957. That's this one up on the right-hand corner, the green one. And it was issued to honor young Cuban athletes. And then in the 1960s, Cuba, as we know, really began to dominate international baseball, not only on the field, but also in the post office. Between 1962 and 69, they had 7 separate issues featuring baseball. This was not surprising considering that Fidel Castro was a huge sports fan, especially baseball. In 1963, his first stamp here on the left was issued for the 4th Pan American Games. And in those games, Cuba averaged 9 runs per game and outscored their opponents 72-22. In 1966, this yellow stamp was issued for the 10th Central American and Caribbean Games. Those games were held in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and were marked by anti-Castro protests by Cuban exiles who threw stones at the Cuban ball players during several of the matches. Regardless, Cuba once again won the gold medal. And then in 1967, the 5th Pan American Games were held in Winnipeg. And this would be the only time that the United States won a gold medal in baseball at the Pan Am Games. And they beat Cuba 2-1 in the final game. Some of those players on the US team were John Curtis and Paul Splittorff, both who pitched 15 years in the major leagues. Another member of that team was Mark Marquez, who you may remember as the coach for Stanford University baseball for about 40 years. In 1969, the 17th World Cup was held in the Dominican Republic. And this is the first time since 1942 that the US fielded a team in World Cup competition. It was once again another politically charged tournament, but this time it was anti-American. The anti-Americanism was spawned by US military intervention, which had taken place 4 years earlier during the Dominican Republic's revolution. Cuba was undefeated 10-0, and US's only loss was 2-1 in the final game to Cuba. And that final game in Cuba, there was such a protest against the Americans that they had to call in almost 6,000 armed soldiers were surrounding the field. Two members of that team for the USA were Steve Rogers and Lenny Randall. It'd be interesting to interview those guys and hear their impressions of that incident. Here's an unusual Ajman, which is one of the Trucial states, which later became part of the United Arab Emirates, issued this series of stamps called Champions of Sport in 1969. They issued a series here on baseball. They had one on professional boxers, race car drivers, and so forth. And of course, as we all know, Ajman has little, if any, relationship with baseball. And that's what's interesting about these, because as we've seen in previous stamps we've already looked at, the country that issued the stamps usually does so in order to commemorate athletic achievements of for their country. And Ajman, of course, had no claims on baseball. The second interesting thing about these are the first stamps we see issued by any country that included the image of a familiar baseball player. Everything previous to this was simply a generic image of a ball player. Obviously, these stamps were issued for collectors in mind, and it really begins a trend that took off in the 1980s. Finally, 30 years after the first US stamp is issued, in 1969, the United States issued this stamp to commemorate the centennial of professional baseball, which was largely in recognition of the Cincinnati Red Stockings 1869 team, which was the first openly all-professional team. They had 10 salaried players on the team. And during the 1869 season, they were undefeated at 57-0, and they continued that undefeated string into 1870 with 84 consecutive wins. The design of the stamp itself is strikingly similar to another design that was introduced that same year, and that's the Major League Baseball logo. Okay, so that pretty much covers most of the stuff that was produced through the 60s. Now we're going to go look at some interesting issues during the past 50 years. Taiwan, Little League champs. Everybody knows the story about the tremendous success that Taiwan has had in the Little League World Series. In 1969 was the first year that they played in international competition in the Little League World Series, and they won the whole thing that year. And then from 1971 to 1978, Taiwan issued 18 different postage stamps honoring their Little League champions. They won the title in 71, 72, and 73. Then after the 73 championship, questions began to arise, not just because they were winning, but how they were winning. In the final 3 games in Williamsport in 1973, they overpowered their competition. They threw 3 no-hitters and outscored their opponents 57-0. So the concerns were raised about overage boys and violations of residency restrictions. They came back in 74, they won the championship again. And then in 75, Little League banned all foreign teams from participating until they could straighten out the rules regarding residency. They had an investigation of Taiwan and found out that they were indeed creating super teams with players culled from all over the country. So Taiwan returned to the competition in 1977 after they more or less had straightened out their issues. And they promptly won the next 5 Little League World Series. And then from 69 to 96, Taiwan's won 17 Little League World Series. Staying in Asia, we get to baseball in Japan. You know, high school baseball in Japan rivals the Japan professional leagues in popularity. And Japan's annual high school baseball tournament can be likened to March Madness in the United States. The first high school championship tournament was held in 1915, and these 2 stamps on your left were issued to commemorate their 50th anniversary. Another annual event held in Japan is the Intercity Baseball Championship, which is held between non-professional teams. This competition began in 1927, and this very attractive stamp here on the right was issued to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Intercity Series. The winner of the Intercity Series is awarded the Black Lion flag, and that's why you see this lion on the baseball. Next, we move to the 50th anniversary of professional baseball in Japan. And there were 3 stamps issued, which featured 3 important people in Japan's professional baseball. I want to talk about each of them here. Eiji Sawamura was an unknown 17-year-old high school player in 1934 when he faced Babe Ruth's All-Star team. And he pitched in 6 games against the major leaguers in that series, and he got knocked around pretty good. But there's one game he pitched in which became legendary. He entered in the 4th inning of a scoreless tie. He held the American team to 1 run and struck out 9 batters. In fact, he struck out Charlie Gehringer, Ruth, Gehrig, and Jimmy Fox in succession, and he struck out Ruth 3 times in a row. Although he lost the game 2-1, or rather 1-0, he lost 1-0 on a Gehrig home run. He became an instant folk hero. Later, he played pro ball with the Yomiuri Giants. He threw 3 no-hitters, including the first no-hitter in Japan pro ball. He was drafted in Japan, the Japanese Army in 1943, and he was killed during the war. They have an annual Sawamura Award, which is equivalent to our Cy Young Award. The second individual is Masarua Kagura. He was a contemporary of Sawamura in the early years of Japan Baseball League. He was a pitcher and an outfielder. He once led the league in ERA. He was also killed during World War II, and both he and Sawamura are the only members of Japan's Hall of Fame who died during World War II. The third individual is Matsutaro Shariki, who is known as the father of Japanese professional baseball. Shariki owned a major Japanese newspaper, the Yomiuri Shimbun. He was also founded the Nippon Television Network, which was Japan's first commercial television station. He was the organizing force behind the Japanese all-star teams that competed against major leaguers during the 1930 tours. After the 1934 Major League tour of Japan, Shariki turned the Japan All-Stars into a pro team. That pro team later became known as the Yomiuri Giants. And after World War II, he oversaw the realignment of Japan's professional leagues into its current 2-league schedule, its 2-league structure. He was the first inductee into Japan's Baseball Hall of Fame, and they give an annual award called the Matsutaro Shariki Award to the person who contributes the most to Japanese baseball. They do play baseball in Europe, believe it or not. The first baseball stamps from Europe came from the small country of San Marino, which commemorated the 8th European Championship. That tournament was held in Milan, Italy, and was won by the Netherlands. In fact, the Netherlands is the dominant team in Europe, having won 24 of the 36 championships, European championships. Italy has won 10. But if you're in Netherlands, you don't say baseball, you say honkbal. They're the honkbal champions. Also of note, Netherlands has the bragging rights for the earliest organized baseball game recorded on the European continent. And that took place in 1901. Continuing with baseball in Europe, in 1973, Italy hosted the first Intercontinental Cup Baseball Championships. This was a biennial tournament last held in 2010. Japan won the gold medal in the first international cup, though we should note that Cuba did not participate in the first 3 tournaments. And when they did participate, they won 11 gold medals and 3 silvers. In 1978, San Marino issued another set of stamps for the World Cup Championships. Cuba, once again, undefeated, won the gold medal in that 25th World Cup. The USA took the silver medal in those games. And there were some pretty good Major League ball players, future major leaguers on that US team, including Tim Wallach, Gary Francona, Mark Thurman, Tim Leary, and Atlee Hamilton. This is just some miscellaneous things. Okay, we get to history of Cuban baseball. In 1974, Cuba commemorated the origins of the game on the Cuban, on the island with a set of stamps. And while the roots of baseball in Cuba date back to the 1860s, the first recorded game took place in December of 1874, when a team from Havana beat a team from Matanzas by a score of 51-9. The gentleman on the right in this 8 centavos stamp is named Emilio Sabarin, and he's one of the co-founders of Cubans Professional. He was also a second baseman in that first game that was played in 1874. It is somewhat questionable how much credit Sabarin is due for his founding of the professional league, because there were several people involved in that. It appears that much of his legacy rests on his status as a revolutionary hero. During the 1890s, he raised funds for Cuba's revolution against Spain and was arrested and sentenced in 1895. And then 2 years later, he died in a prison in Morocco. In that first game in Cuba, celebrated their 130th anniversary in 2004. And Cuba issued a series of stamps. And this one, here's a souvenir sheet, shows several famous ball players from Cuba. Talk about a couple of them here. Up here on the right is Martin Diego, who is widely considered one of the greatest two-way players in baseball history. He played every position except catcher during his career, which ran from 1922 to 1950. He won 250 games as a professional. He won 2 batting titles. He set offensive and pitching records in both Cuba and the Mexican League. And he is the first man to be a member of the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame, the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame, and the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Next, come down here, this gentleman down here on the bottom, Adolphe Mckay. Some of you may be familiar with him if you know your baseball history. Mckay, prior to the integration of Major League Baseball, was the foremost Latin American player in the major leagues. He was known as the pride of Havana, and he pitched for 20 years in the National League with 194 career wins. And in 1923, with the Cincinnati, he recorded one of the more remarkable seasons for a pitcher, winning 27 games and had a 193 ERA in 322 innings. The last guy I'll talk about on this sheet is this guy right here in the middle down here, Conrado Marrero. Connie Marrero. He became a fan favorite as an amateur when he was a star pitcher for Cuba's national teams during the 1940s. And he didn't turn professional until the age of 35 when he pitched in the Cuban League. And then at the age of 38, he was a rookie pitcher with the Washington Senators. He pitched 5 years in the American League. And he only won 39 games, but he was named to the American League All-Star game at the age of 40, certainly the oldest first-time All-Star player. And then Connie lived a rather long life. And in 2013, he received a check in the amount of $20,000 from Major League Baseball. This was his first pension check that he had received from the major leagues. He died a year later, 2 days shy of his 103rd birthday. Okay, now we'll move on to United States. During the 1980s, U.S. produced quite a few baseball-related stamps. First one we see is 1982, Jackie Robinson. This is the third baseball stamp out of the United States and the first real baseball player featured on a U.S. stamp. And this was part of the Postal Service's Black Heritage Series. The following year, we see a Babe Ruth stamp, one of the most popular stamps that's been issued. This was part of the American Sports Series, which began in 1981. And the stamp was issued in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of the All-Star Game, which was held in Comiskey Park that year, which was also the site of the first All-Star Game in 1933. In 1984, two athletes were honored in the American Sports Series. First, there was Jim Thorpe, and the photo in this stamp, the image is based on when Thorpe played with the Canton Bulldogs. And while he's best known for his accomplishments in football, we cannot forget that he played 6 years in the National League. And also that same year, the fifth athlete honored in the American Sports Series was Roberto Clemente. This stamp was issued on what would have been Clemente's 50th birthday. And then in 1989, they issued the Lou Gehrig stamp. And the Gehrig stamp was issued at the Baseball Hall of Fame as part of the 50th anniversary of the Hall of Fame Museum. Some other interesting issues from the United States have been in 2000, the Postal Service partnered with Major League Baseball to honor legendary baseball stars. They selected 20 players from the Major League's 100 nominees for the All-Century team. And those 20 were Jackie Robinson, Eddie Collins, Matheson, Cobb, Sizzler, Hornsby, Cochran, Ruth, Johnson, Clemente, Grove, Speaker, Cy Young, Fox, Trainer, Satchel Paige, Wagner, Gibson, Dean, and Garrett. Those are the 20 guys. Some people could take issue, and I would take issue with Dizzy Dean and Pie Trainer. Of course, the problem is some of the better ball players at that time were still alive. So you couldn't put Willie Mays or Mickey Mantle out here, or Joe DiMaggio for that matter, because they were still all alive. And U.S. Postal Service does not produce stamps of living individuals. In 2001, they issued one of my favorite issues. It's an issue of 10 classic ballparks. And shown here on this sheet are included Ebbets Field, Briggs Stadium, Crosley Field, Yankee Stadium, Polo Grounds, Forbes Field, Fenway Park, Comiskey Park, Shibe Park, and Wrigley Field. These images for each of these stamps were taken from vintage postcards of the 1930s and the 1940s. And then 10 years later, in 2010, the Negro League Baseball was honored with these two stamps. One showed action at home plate, and the other is Ruth Foster, who is known as the father of black baseball. Foster was the primary organizer of the Negro National League in 1920 and the league president. And there were several black ball clubs prior to 1920, but none of them lasted very long. And the Negro National League was stable for at least 11 years. Before he was a team owner, he was recognized as one of the best African-American pitchers. He pitched for 6 different black ball clubs. And in 1902, he was a star pitcher on an all-white minor league team in Michigan. Now we're going to move south of the border. Mexico's first baseball stamp was this 1974 issue commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Mexican League. The Mexican League was founded in 1925 by Alejandro Reyes and Ernesto Carmona. Reyes, whose picture I got up here on the right, Reyes was the first president of the league, and he later served as its commissioner until 1942. And Carmona was later a co-founder of the Mexico City Reds. An interesting note about Reyes, he has also founded the first daily newspaper in the world that was devoted solely to sports. That newspaper is La Afición, and it is still in operation today. Both Reyes and Carmona were elected to the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame. A couple years ago, this issue came out. The Mexico City Red Devils are perhaps the best known of all the teams in the Mexican League. They were founded in 1940 and originally known as the Reds. There was a game in the 40s, early 40s, when they were behind by 6 runs in the 9th inning. And the Reds scored 7 times in the 9th inning and won the game 14-13. One of the opposing players on the team, on the other team, exclaimed, "Boy, those Reds, they play like devils." And the name stuck, and they became the Red Devils. This issue here features 3 former Red Devil players, Jose Sandoval, Miguel Ojeda, and Roberto Saucedo. Now we'll move north of the border. In 1988, Canada issued their first baseball stamp celebrating 150 years of organized baseball in Canada. According to the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, the first recorded game of baseball in Canada took place on June 4th, 1938 in Beachville, Ontario. This predates the Abner Doubleday myth by a full year. Thus, they claim the first recorded game in North America. And last thing we're gonna show here is this other issue from Canada. This came out a couple of years ago. And Canada honored the Asahi. The Asahi was a Japanese Canadian baseball club in Vancouver. from 1914 to 1941. They were one of the city's most dominant amateur teams. They won multiple league titles in Vancouver. And during the 1930s, they became known as the Yankees of the Northwest Coast. In 1942, the team was disbanded when all of its members were among the 22,000 Japanese Canadians who were interned by the Canadian government. The Asahi were inducted into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in 2003. And if you want to know more about this story, I highly recommend there's a documentary that was produced about 15 years ago, and it's titled Sleeping Tigers, the Asahi Baseball Story. You can download it for free, and it lasts less than an hour. It's a really great story. So that's all I have. And so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions for Dan?
Yeah, how did you start collecting all those stamps, like that presentation? That's really amazing when you put it, think of how many stamps there are there that you put together in the whole.
Yeah, what's your question?
How collect all these stamps?
I can't hear you.
How long did it take you to collect all these stamps and put all this together?
Oh, how long did it take me to collect all these stamps? Well,
Yeah, put this together.
well,
How long?
I first started collecting stamps when I was 9-10 years old back in the 50s, and but I really didn't get it. I didn't get into, and I really didn't pick it up again as an adult until in the 80s. And I didn't realize there were that many countries that issued baseball stamps. And so the mid 80s, I ran across some stamps from, I think, from Venezuela or Colombia, somewhere down there. And I started, and I had a stamp collection that was just purely US postage, and which I really wasn't keeping up with. And then I said, this really fits, I really just picked up and started collecting. So I've been seriously collecting baseball stamps since about 1985. And I have more stuff than my wife. I mean, this is only the tip of the iceberg. It's, how long did it take me to put together this? I don't know. I worked on it on and off during the last year.
Okay, all right. Well, Dan, thank you very much. Man, it was fascinating presentation.
All right. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you, thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Got two quick announcements before we do our President's Day trivia quiz. How's this? Where am I?
Right there.
Just right. So the first one is, I'm glad Mike Capps is here because I think in April, we're going to do a Sugarland Skeeters Space Cowboy game for our meeting. And I've been fortunate enough to be spending a lot of time with Deacon Jones, who's in good health now, and we were helping him clean the mold out of his air conditioning unit. So just a word of advice, have your coils pulled out, cleaned, at least supposed to do it every year, but every 4 or 5 years. And he's been in there since '86. He says, people don't do that. So he's got black stuff falling on his carpet. But anyway, he's in good health now. He's taking nitro. He's been sick since before opening day, and he's moving around like the old Deacon. So with him and Mike Capps together, and out at the Skeeter games, they're now using, according to Bob, they're using they're not. The Skeeter, no longer the Skeeter. Yeah, well, I said the Skeeter to the Cowboys, but they're using the automatic umpires, calling the balls and strikes, so the umpires are pantomiming. I'm gonna wait for one of them to get in an argument if the roll button's calling them, no. But, and then the second thing is, we're still trying to put together the vintage baseball exhibition. We've joined the National Vintage Baseball Association. There is a April national meeting in Michigan, and they have a vintage baseball World Series in Dearborn, Michigan. Well, I don't think we'll get a league together, but Bob Blair knows a guy that has 600 amateur people. So we're gonna try to get two fields. I was gonna try to get Memorial and one in Katy. I've talked to the Katy Combine. But the McCruskey team has not been able to get all the details worked out. Did talk to Larry tonight. He said he would start pitching in one game. I was gonna blind Tom. So we'll argue about a call or something. I'll get to throw him out of the game so he won't get hurt out there too long. And if one of the game gets lopsided, maybe we can talk Cal into coming out, making a trade during the middle of the game. I mean, it is gonna be an exhibition, so hopefully we can do a little shtick and make it interesting. Who's our Channel 11 guy? Jason Bristol has agreed to put it, do a little thing on his Sunday evening show. So to help promote it, and Bill Brown is gone, but he did volunteer earlier to be part of the publicity. Katy Combine is interesting, Bob Blair with the babies and Copas with the Boston, so we could probably like 3 6-inning exhibition games and get a little publicity out and get a bunch of baseball people out. Maybe increase our SABR chapter membership, which was the point of the whole thing to start off with. So hopefully we can do that by the end of next month. And this is SABR President's. This is President's Day. This is a repeat of a previous quiz. It's the easiest quiz we have ever had here. I even have hints in the question. So I'll read them off. You can answer them, we can go, and you people on the Zoom, you should be able to get them. Okay, question number 1. There's 23 questions and there are 23 answers, which is the first. Okay, actually have the same number of answers this question. The Oakland A's had 2 rookie speedsters in 1974 and 75 with the same last name. One was in 105 games, scored 33 runs without ever having an at-bat. The other had a solid 17-year career and even made the All-Star team. One was named Herb, the other named Claudel. First name. What was their last name?
Same time.
Tell the answer, everybody will know.
I already have somebody to write the next tribute. Linda,
Yeah. Right.
That'd be a first for the Dierkers. Screaming them out, Linda. Originally drafted out of Slippery Rock by the St. Louis Cardinals, this big first baseman who's currently a free agent, played with the 2019 World Series champ from Washington. His first name was Matt. Matt played for the Senators, first baseman. Not the Senators, the Nationals. Okay, number 3. A 9-year MLB career, the last 5 with Boston, before signing to play in Japan, because he got mad at Jimmy Williams for being left off the roster for the playoffs. This lefty outfielder ended with an even .300 career average at age 30. His first name was Reggie. Switch hitter. Oh, lefty. Man. He was a switch hitter and then he went totally lefty. Okay. Now, number 4. This Cajun pitcher, along with Astros teammates Roy Oswalt, Kirk Saarloos, Brad Lids, Octavio Dotel, and Billy Wagner combined for a no-hitter against the Yankees on June 11th, 2003. 6-man no-hitter, only time in Major League history. His first name was Pete. Still is. Answer would be his last name.
Okay. Number 5 was known as the straw that stirred the drink. Also, it's Mr. October. First name Reggie. I hope nobody misses that. Number 6. This 34-year-old former longtime Pirate second baseman played for both Washington and Oakland in 2021. First name Josh. What's his last name? Infield. It was in Pittsburgh a long time and he's played for a few teams. Okay. Number 7. Acquired by the Dodgers in 2016, this 31-year-old recently re-upped as a free agent for 4 years after hitting 20 home runs for the Blues last season as their second baseman. First name Chris. He's a grinder.
Ranger.
Yeah. All right, number 8, the University of Houston grad and first draft pick, 2006 by the Pirates. Last pitched in the bigs for the Phillies in 2014. With the U of H, his first name is Brad. That one. Number 9. Known as the Big Train and an inaugural class inductee in the Hall of Fame. The first name of Walker. You need me to repeat that, Tony?
What's that?
You need me to repeat that one?
No,
Okay, you got it? All right.
yeah.
Okay, the 20-game winner and World Series star for the 65 Twins. His first name was Jim, but most people call him Mckay. What's his last name? Guys getting these back there? Down the street. Let's see that. Okay. 10. 11. The Phils traded 5 players to get him from Oakland in 82. Had a nickname of 5 for 1. He played 9 of his 12 years with the Phillies and became the first player to ever homer twice in the first inning. First name was Vaughn. Not Vaughn, not Dan. 12, the right-handed pitcher averaged over 200 innings a year for St. Louis and Boston in the mid-70s and finished with over 100 wins for his career. First name was Reggie.
Common theme to saturation.
Another Reggie, yeah. Number 13, played by Ronald Reagan in the 52 film The Winning Way. This 373 game winning Hall of Famer set National League record for shutouts. He starred in the 26th World Series for the Cardinals. First name was Grover. No Googling the answer. Sorry to bother you, Bob. Okay, with his monster year in 1930, this former Cubs center fielder and Hall of Famer still holds the major league record for RBIs in a single season with 191. First name Hack. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Hack. With an ace.
Same name with his finish, right?
Yeah. I thought he would be a catcher. But he was, that's the question. Hack who? It's the last name. That's what we're asking. He was 5'5", yeah. 15. What, Joe?
Because you'll get
Currently a free agent after finishing last. All right, let's have a little order in you. This is a quiz. Or tell the president you're misbehaving. Joe, you're misbehaving.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's what I am. Currently a free agent after finishing last year with the Phil, this USC 2006 #1 draft pick for the Yankees with the 20-game winner in 2011 for the Diamondbacks. His first name is Ian.
Yeah.
That's the question. 16. This tall left-handed pitcher almost brought the Astros home in the late 90s. Then sealed the deal later with the Diamondbacks. First name Randy.
Those ball behind batters.
Yes, Don Trucker. That was stick. That was good.
Strasburg.
Huh? He killed Bird too with the second pitch. It's a changeup. Spot the bird. Number 17. From 1983 to 1999, this speedy outfielder played for 9 different teams. Shares the record for most steals in a game with 6. His 620 career steals are the most ever for a player never making the All-Star team. 6 steals in one game. That's what it was. First name was Otis. Number 18. Chairman of the board, this crafty left-handed pitcher has the best winning percentage in MLB history. Whitey. I don't know why doctor's on there. Whitey who? I'm sure. That's right. Number 19. Stand by. Throw right catcher, the only Hall of Famer inducted in a Montreal uniform. First name Gary.
Oh, good.
Who's yelling out the answers? Number 20, drafted by the or thou San Diego Padres with the first overall pick in the 2004 Major League Draft. He spent his entire Major League career with the Rangers after battling alcohol, jail, and arm injuries. First name Matt. Another guy. Hamilton. John Hamilton, that problem. Actually, this is the guy I asked Mike about earlier. Okay.
Man. Give us a hint.
He's a grinder.
Oh, yeah.
That means we got Millender.
21, Hall of Famer with the Pirates. This big first baseman was part of the family. First name Willie.
Please.
Okay. A lot of Willies.
Getting skulls.
Number 22, breaking in with Atlanta in 59. His bat left. He was a bat left, throws left, and the regular right fielder for the Colt 45s till they became the Astros, 62, 63, 60, or 65. The 45s. He then moved on to the Angels, finishing with the Cubs. His first name was Al.
Oh,
He was on your team, Larry.
You know something.
When he broke in, he the Braves.
59. Yeah,
Yeah, you said it like, they were Milwaukee.
you're right. They were Milwaukee. I stand. Correct. Good call. He broke in with the Braves. Yeah. They were Milwaukee. Yeah. Okay. The last one is the number 1 pick for the Astros in 1976. He was 15-0 his senior year in high school with a 0 earned run average. After 2 years in Houston, he was traded to Seattle for Frank Reynolds. Led the American League in strikeouts in 82, finished his career in Japan. He also played for the White Sox, Royals, Angels, and Rangers. First name Floyd. And that's all of them. Anybody need any of them repeated?
Some presidents I've never heard.
Yes. Well, that's all right.
Were all the last names presidents?
No.
Up until the last.
Hey, Mike. Can you repeat number 3?
Number 3. In a 9-year major league career, the last 5 at Boston for signing to play in Japan. Sleepy outfielder ended with an even 300 career average. He retired at age 30. First name was Reggie.
Oh, wait a minute. We start now.
He asked me number 3.
Oh, are we going through it? Making sure we know the answers.
Well, if you want me to repeat one, I will, then we'll go through them and we'll tell the answers to the ones who haven't already called it. All right, put it in. Okay, so it's President's Day. So the answers up to the last are president. Not only are they president, but they're presidents in the order they were president. Oh, and we did this once before, a few years ago for the 4th of July, but I changed some of them. Okay, it was Herb Washington and Claudel Washington. And George Washington was the first president. Very good. All right, originally drafted out of the Slippery Rock, the Cardinals. Played with the 2000 World Series Washington champions, Matt Adams, right? Second president was John Adams. It's presidents. 2. We did Washington, then we went and the second. Okay. Number 3. What do you think it is?
Jefferson.
Very good. Reggie Jefferson. All right. This Cajun pitcher that with the no-hitter was Pete Monroe. Spelled it M-U-N-R-O, a little different from President Monroe, but still the same. And the straw that started the drink.
Jackson.
Reggie Jackson for Andrew Jackson. We had 2 Adams and no major leaguer named Madison, who was also. This 34-year-old former Wellington Pirate second baseman played with the Senators in Oakland, 2021. First name Josh Harrison, William Henry Harrison, president. Won the Battle of Tippecanoe. 7, Dodgers. 2016, 31-year-old recently re-upped free agent for 4 years after hitting 20 home runs for the Dodger Blue last season. It's their second baseman. Taylor. Who was the president? Zachary Taylor. Very good.
Veteran of Mexican American.
All right, next one's tough. A U of H grad, first round pick by the Pirates. Last pitch in the big for the Phillies. First name Brad. Who was the president? Good. You win a penny. All right. Notice the big train. Inaugural class inductee in the Hall of Fame. First name Walter Johnson. And he didn't get impeached like Andrews did. Yes. 20-game winner and World Series star for the 66 Twins.
Grant.
President.
Great.
Let's see.
That's Grant. I'm checking you guys. This is baseball, not world history. But you are, you do have a doctorate in American history. You shouldn't have seen it right. And the Phils traded 5 players to get him in 82. He played 9 of his 12 years for them. The first player to ever homer twice. First name Vaughn. President. Yeah, you've been to his stadium, haven't you? Where am I?
12.
Reggie. Right-handed pitcher. Reggie Cleveland. Very good. The president.
I don't know, Cleveland.
All right, there we go. Grover Cleveland, yeah.
He was sitting out there.
Like this is redundant. Played by Ronald Reagan in the 52 film, The Winning Way.
Cleveland, again.
Grover Cleveland Alexander, yes. I didn't realize I'd done that. No wonder it took me so long to write this. Okay, with his monster year in 30, the former Cub center fielder, the RBI record, first name Hack
Wilson,
and the president.
Woodrow.
Very good. Currently a free agent. After finishing last year with the Phil. This USC 206 number draft pick for the Yankees with a 20-game winner for the Diamondbacks. First name Ian
Kennedy.
Me.
Kennedy. Man, we skipped all right.
You skipped a few. Chris hits.
But there was no guy named Coolidge that played. Or who? Except for Joe, I couldn't put Joe Morgan. Okay, we're back in player.
16.
It's all left-handed pitcher, almost brought the Astros home in the 90s and sealed the deal with the Diamondbacks. First name Randy
Johnson.
LBJ. There you go. Good.
Aaron.
From 83 to 99, this speedy outfielder played for 9 different teams, stole 6 bases in the game, had 620 steals, never made the All-Star team. First name Otis
Nixon.
Tricky did. Richard Nixon, chairman of the board.
White.
Ford.
Heidi, Gerald Ford. That right throw right catcher, Johnny Hall of Famer, inducted in Montreal uniform, Gary
Carter.
Jimmy Carter. Drafted by the San Diego Padres, first overall pick. Spent his entire major league career with the Rangers after battling alcohol, jail, and arm injuries. First name Matt Bush. That's the guy I asked. Yeah. It was really interesting reading about him when I found it. No, he got called up September last year. So he's 37 years old now. He has a new fan in me from researching this. I'm gonna see how he does next year. All right, so Willie Starkville was not a president. You're correct. Yeah,
You should have been.
but he got elected MVP. All right, so you got 21, 22. That's right. Larry, Matt left, played 3 years when you were playing for the 45s. Who was your right fielder? Al
Spangler.
Spangler, Lindigo. Yeah, Al Spangler. And the last one was the #1 pick for the Astros in 76. Lloyd.
Spanish.
So what did, when the, usually what do they play right before a baseball game? The national anthem, which is presidential, and what's another name for it?
Star Spangled Banner.
The Star Spangler Banner.
That's it.
Count 'em up.
Oh, okay. That was pretty easy though, especially if you call them. All right, who got 15 out of 23? Earl,
Why?
Joe.
You play what?
Who got 15?
John, you're good.
John again. All right, who got 16? 17.
Oh, my goodness.
Whoa.
18. 19.
Ron got this.
20. I got 20. 21.
I got 20.
22.
Right, you got 23,
23.
22.
Which one? That Bush one.
Couldn't believe it.
That's number 12.
Celebration, believe
Well, he's like 20.
Yes, that's right. That's why I had 2 questions. All right, Irv, you win. You got to ride the next one. I predicted the winner would get over 20. That's by far the easiest one we've ever had. But it's a good one. Very well done. I had to do a spank.
All right, everybody, I know this went long, but we had 3 great speakers and a great trivia contest. So next month, we are meeting 21st. We'll have to send out some information for around the 8th or 9th, and maybe Bob will send out a reminder. I'm going to be out of town the 8th all the way into the 20th for my anniversary. So I'm going on a cruise, man. Real soul. We're driving to Miami, and I'm going on a cruise with my wife. And my dad's going too, so you know, I gotta take an 80-year-old man trip to Miami. So that's gonna be great. Yeah, that'll be fun, especially since we just bought a hybrid car and he still can't figure out why you just push the button to turn it on instead of using the ignition. He doesn't understand that yet. So working on a couple of different presenters. We might have a documentary next month. That project you sent me about, Bob?
Yeah.
A long way home. Long way home. They've already agreed to talk with us.
I think to come to that, I will do it.
Yeah. So there might be a really good chance we have that next month.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it might be a really good chance we have that next month. So,
Great vacation.
hey, you know, these are great. These first 2 months. I don't know if we can top this. What's that? No, thanks. I told my students don't even try to email me because I'm not responding. See y'all later. See you next month.
Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Amen.